Hello, Fleet Ready Fam, and welcome to Fleet Ready Gaming. My name is Savad, and today we are going to be starting a new series covering the PU monthly report called Salute. Um, Today we'll be going over the recently released January 2023 PU monthly report to see what progression CIG has made in the last month. Let's go ahead and check it out. All right. Welcome to January PU's monthly report. Although the upcoming patch is still being tested and tweaked in the PTU, most teams began the year moving on from their work on Alpha 3.18, from extensive AI updates to new vehicles, locations, and features. Read on for everything done in pursuit of 2023's extensive content schedule. AI features. The AI features team started a year enabling AI characters to throw grenades. This involved working in multiple areas, including new logic for when to throw grenades to ensure a challenge without overwhelming the player, parabola collision, checking to ensure the grenade lands correctly, and animation so that the AI looks correct when throwing. Definitely important. January also saw the implementation of attack and defend areas, which can be assigned to AI characters to defend or to direct and control fighting in specific ways. On the most basic level, the defend area limits where NPCs are positioned when fighting, whereas the attack area limits where they target. When assigned to either area, NPCs will prepare to fight by equipping their weapons and taking ready stances before moving to the area on high alert. So perception happens quickly and perception reactions are skipped. When defending, AI will move to a cover point inside of the area and defensively peek out. When attacking, they will use the existing investigative behavior to search for hostile forces. From the AI team, the attack area is great for building pressure on the player, whereas the defend area can provide the player with a tough challenge as AI are hunkered down and ready to fight. The implementation of this feature involved reusing existing systems in new ways, changing the tactile queries, positional, and targeting selection to take into consideration the attack or defend area that the AI may have. Interesting. So it definitely is going to make AI be a lot more team cooperative, it seems, and also have a lot more tools in their hands, especially with grenades being a new trick in the bag. Moving on to AI tech. Last year, AI Tech completed the first iteration of NPCs driving ground vehicles. Last month, they fixed several related bugs as more designers began using the feature. Super excited to see ground vehicles finally being used by AI. I mean, imagine, doing your business and an NPC Nova tank shows up, or even ballistas, controlling an area of denial situation. It's gonna be crazy. They also progressed with the feature that enables NPCs to use the transit systems like elevators and move between platforms. That'll be awesome for space stations. This time they focused on NPCs using trains to move between locations. Definitely will make cities more believable. This required exposing new functionality on the transit manager and more complex behaviors before and during transit. New functionality includes providing more information about the gateways at specific destinations and information about carriages, such as time spent at a destination and time until arrival. On the locomotion side, the team added further support for soft stops and separated them from harsh stops. A soft stop means that an NPC will choose the best animation for stopping even if it will overshoot its destination, while a harsh stop will attempt to stop immediately. Locomotion support was also given for bug fixing and alien creature movement. Wondering if that's for the little roly-poly bug that was recently brought into 3.18, or if that is for something else that we've heard about or maybe haven't heard about. For the Subsumption Apollo tool, the team progressed with implementing feedback and bug fixing. They also added new functionality to the Subsumption Master Graph, which making it possible to have functions on top of transitions to determine whether a state transition can be done. So some quality control, making sure that animations go smoothly. Nice. The usable coordinator was also completed, which allows the designers to specify a selection of usables for NPCs in specific areas and prioritize the order of selection. I'm curious if that's a little bit more of the attack and defend that was talked about above. Interesting. The feature that allows NPCs to perceive threats through audio and visual stimuli and react to hostile vehicles was completed. In a related area, further updates were made to the behavior that enables NPCs reacting to stimuli to enter combat. So with the hostile vehicles, I assume that means both ships and hopefully ground vehicles. It would be cool to see, you know, NPCs scramble when they see a threat that's too big for them to deal and try to gather the resources or, you know, coordinate a proper attack with equipment upon entering those scenarios. AI Tech started work on two new features. One allows overrides for navigation mesh generation so that the team can create navigation meshes for specific agents in narrow areas. For example, this will enable NPCs to traverse areas where only a crouch state is possible, such as vents or underfloor areas, which could lead for some very intense and gameplay. Imagine you're in a vent and you turn a corner and there's a dude there. Um, the second feature enables the team to mark areas with increased navigation cost, which will influence the path chosen by NPCs. This will be used to create areas that NPCs should avoid, like areas with fire, or to encourage them to travel in specific areas like sidewalks. They also supported Alpha 3.18 and allocated time to TechDebt to update some of the AI system's functionalities. Nice, so making sure things are running smoothly and are up to date. Moving on to AI vehicle features. The vehicle feature team focused on space combat AI improvements in January. The intent is to have combat AI behave in a more dynamic way that encourages players to move and explore the various ship mechanics. This involved breaking the AI into different well-defined trees, which will help players to identify what kind of enemies they're up against. These improvements also allow the easier integration of more maneuvers to further increase the skill level and interest of higher level ships. Similarly, AI vehicle features worked on a new behavior logic to deliver improved atmospheric flight combat. This is intended to work with the control surface feature being developed by the vehicle feature team and will lead to AI ships tailing and chasing players to get behind them, flying more like a plane when appropriate. Interesting. Um, you know, doing a lot more in atmosphere combat for myself lately, I've definitely noticed that the AI tend to try to tail versus kind of jousting like they used to before. And so you get these interesting engagement patterns with the within the PTU right now already. And maybe this is part of that work that they're working on right now. Who knows? Moving on to animation, alongside embedded work for the various feature teams, facial animations were developed for emotes and background characters such as the female vendor. Good to hear. It'd be nice to see these our city AI be a little bit more lively. Character art. In January, the character art team began production of the Frontier environmental wear costumes and polished the Frontier undersuit. Character concept progressed with the concept exploration for the Rough and Ready gang fauna and the Dusters faction. So I'm not sure if these are all pyro related areas. I mean, I know the Frontier stuff is, definitely. But interesting. If you happen to know if that's pyro related, let me know in the comments below. Moving on to ship art. In the UK, the art team continued work on the small ship mentioned in last month's report, with certain elements reaching the LOD-0 complete. They also began exploring ideas for a variant. The Argo SRV passed through final art. Final polish is currently underway on the exterior before the LOD and damage passes begin. The interior continued through final art and received an LOD pass. Can't wait for the SRV. I had it at one point. It's one I need to pick up again for my whole logistics fleet portion of my fleet. Because the idea of just being able to use tractor beams to pick up other ships and cargo containers and things that would normally be just too massive for a standard single tractor beam or even handheld tractor beams sounds awesome. It sounds like a lot of fun. Development of the Crusader Spirit continued, which passed its white box review, with the A1 variant moving into the gray box phase. I'm super excited for the Spirit series. I have the E1, the luxury version, because I plan on using that as my luxury shuttle between our fleet ships and things like that for our higher ranking members. And yeah, exciting stuff. The exterior is shaping up nicely with the key form all established and all major elements like landing gear and VTOLs resolved. The interior is coming along and we're very pleased with the space so far. There are a few visual changes we'd like to make to the doorways to emphasize Crusader's visual language. Cool. A previously unannounced ground vehicle passed its gray box sanity review before the artwork progressed to LOD-0. The exterior is almost finalized, only requiring additional detail while the interior is progressing well. I'm curious what type of ground vehicle it's going to be, if it's going to be a hover-based or, an actually wheel-based. I've even heard some people rumor that it could be the tumbrils, but fairly certain that those were announced on the roadmap and we saw work on them before they were removed, so most likely not those. Even though I know a lot of people, myself included, are excited to get those motorcycles into the game. The US team completed art white box for another in production vehicle, which was then passed to the system design team. Gray box began on another ship. Half of the team focused on the main fuselage geometry, while the other prototyped a new way to enter and exit the ship. Interesting. I'm curious if it's legitimately a new style of entering and exiting a ship, or just a generic figuring out a way to get in and out from a different point. Finally, for ships, an all-new vehicle entered Gray Box, and a new set of alien paints was created for a future release. I'm curious what those alien paints are for, if they're stuff that we're already familiar with, or for potentially something new. With all these new vehicles, it's sounding like it's going to be a lot of stuff for Fleet Week coming up in May, is what my guess is. I'm sure a few of them will be here for the official Q1 release with 3.18, and then Q2 and Fleet Week, so exciting stuff. Got some Luminalia 2952 art there. Moving on to community. The community team kicked off the new year by announcing the winners of the Luminalia holiday card and screenshot contests. They then supported the Red Festival celebrations, including the Moons of Fortune contest, in addition to the now persistent red envelopes. Longtime players received the Red Festival envelopes from the previous 3 celebrations as in-game collector's items. Furthermore, players could claim 3 wooden roosters. Community also supported the return of Siege of Orison dynamic event with an in-depth guide. Throughout January, Community continued to work on the events feature, which is a new section coming to the Community Hub next week. They also worked closely with Turbulent on other exciting additions such as text posts, bug fixes, etc. They are currently planning out new community events as well, coming to a bar near you. Also in January, community welcomed a new bilingual community manager to the LA office, and we're excited to introduce them soon. Moving on to Engine. In January, the physics team's schedule was dominated by 3.18 bug fixing and support. Aside from this, triangle vertex and normal transforms for physics triangle meshes were rewritten to use SSE/AVX, which saves 30% of the cost. Hopefully that's 30% of the cost on the servers, because that we definitely need more. Anything we can get to get those servers working better. Furthermore, the physicalization method for ropes can now be chosen per rope entity. Yay, rope physics. On the renderer, various optimizations were implemented into Gen 12, partially based on telemetry gathered during Alpha 3.18 PTU. Among other things, this included performance improvements for transient lists, recording draw requests, a special submission for scene rendering with reduced thread synchronization, and reduction of calls into the OS for general multi-threading purposes. Additionally, renderer initialization was refactored to prepare for Vulkan. Can't wait for Vulkan. Last month's Gen 12 support for particle refraction now also works as intended. On the core engine, further improvements were made to the remote shader compiler. Last month's work on adding support for huge pages were rolled out internally. Huge pages are now also used within the low memory allocator, JMalloc, to further reduce the executable size of the Linux TGS. The gold linker is now utilized to fold identical functions and various compiler-generated data inside binaries. PageHeap is also now supported for entities which use a special allocator to make debugging memory corruptions easier. Lastly, more work was done to support v2 of the PK4 files introduced at the end of last year in the internal development tools. So lots of, big behind-the-scenes updates going on here to increase performance, reduce size of files, and to further make debugging easier, which is awesome to hear. Moving on to features, Arena Commander. Throughout January, the team focused on polishing the new Arena Commander front end and racetracks, including placing the New Horizons Speedway tracks above a new planet, Green 3 of the Ellis system. Some adjustments were also made to the racetracks themselves to suit the new Earth-like atmosphere. The team also experimented with new loadout selection previous on the front end alongside polishing its style and flow. Work continued on the classic race refactor, with the first version of the new race manager and checkpoint setup being tested and feedback addressed. Optimizations and additions such as splits, qualifying, and new analytic data were made alongside improvements to time accuracy. The refactors of both the rounds and spawning modules continued across Arena Commander and Star Marine. This refactor sees the code drastically improved and brought up to current standards while providing more modularity for new features. It also tackles some of the problem areas that prevented expansion of the old systems, such as separating unintended connections to the PU characters, validating loadouts, and adding the ability to change the ship selection while in game. Glad to hear they're finally getting more and more work out to these modules, to Space Marine and to Arena Commander. They've needed some deep love for some time now. Alright, moving on. Features, characters, and weapons. Last month, the features team continued to support the upcoming patch release with critical bug fixes, specifically issues relating to the cargo system, tractor beam, and inventory. They fixed several client and server crashes too. They also worked on the player skills feature. This tracks certain player activities and actions with minimal hooks into the gameplay feature logic and with an emphasis on performance. From the data and events gathered, players can improve certain aspects of their performance. For example, a player with a higher level of fitness may have more stamina or consume stamina at a lower rate. So this is what we heard about during CitizenCon, and definitely caused some waves of drama as to any major uh, changes to what was originally envisioned. Personally, I think that this will be, a nice benefit for those who are able to play. And from what's being said, it won't impact our characters that much. So even if you don't get to play as often as other people, it won't make too big of a difference. Let's hope that's the actual case. The team has been working on better support for the player playing animations triggered by environmental interactions, such as a player physically opening a locker door or pressing buttons on vehicle dashboards. These are either quick or decorative action sequences with a large focus on reusability to scale with the amount of planned content. There's a lot of balancing to ensure its increased immersion with minimal impact on responsiveness. This one's definitely a big one. With the 100+ ships that we have on top of consoles and things that are just in the environment, being able to see our characters physically interact with them will be very cool to see, but it's definitely going to be time consuming. I can see how this is a big one for them. Features gameplay. The EU team continued work on the tractor beam, this time focusing on escaping mechanics such as how shields affect the required strength of a tractor beam to secure a ship. That's interesting. So, ships obviously with no shields on will be quite easy to tether to, while those that still have shields on, you're going to need a stronger tractor beam. A prototype was built to test the potential and help decide whether average shield strength or per shield face determined the required strength. Additionally, the team began work on detaching and attaching items with the tractor beam, which is an expansion of the attaching to cargo grid feature. A clearer direction for the expected ship engineer gameplay was also defined. This involved determining the gameplay beats and planning the possible malfunctions and dangers players will face while maintaining their ships. Can't wait for engineering gameplay, things like this, where depending on the conditions and scenarios our ships and we as the players are placed in, will be so fascinating to see the potential situations we're placed in. Additionally, the ongoing mining balance update progressed well, with small changes that have bigger impacts being added to the system. For salvage, gameplay features helped missions prepare to use the mechanic in new context. In the US, gameplay features continued with the overall design for loading and unloading physicalized cargo, and designs for missions that leverage the new cargo systems kicked off. These missions will also utilize the boarding actions now available with soft death alongside the retrieval of containers and or other objects of interest. That sounds very interesting. Investigation and preliminary design work started on changes to ship insurance and how it works in conjunction with ship destruction. These changes are necessary to make towing and repairing, either at stations or in space, a better choice. See, that's going to be very interesting. I've had many talks in the last day with a bunch of my org mates about, are we going to see ship claim times increase drastically with this new revelation? Will it take, instead of taking, I'm not sure, but as an example, a hammerhead, I believe it's 40 minutes to an hour without expediting for a hammerhead. I could be way off. But will that be brought up to maybe 4 or 5 hours, a day even perhaps? We know that once capital ships come into the game, that those are supposed to take days, if not weeks, to claim. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. Tasks were started for a change to commodities, including the locations they can be brought and sold from. For example, changes to mining locations will impact the location and prices for mined and refined ores at commodity brokers. Okay. Features, missions. This one will be interesting. The majority of the mission feature team's month was spent addressing bugs and balancing for Alpha 3.18. Progress was also made on the design and prototyping of various new missions, including salvage. From the team, The order we are tackling these missions is based on when we received the necessary support. So the first missions produced will be more simplistic salvage ones. These include a lawful contract in which players must pay for the location of salvage, an unlawful timed mission in which players must strip a ship quickly or deal with inbound hostiles, a lawless mission in which multiple players pay for the location of the same large salvage opportunity, and one in which players must restore a ship using nearby wrecks for materials. Very interesting. I wonder what happens with that, restored ship. Do you get to keep it? Can you steal it? Do you have to, or is it just, turned in at a hangar and all said and done? Be very interesting to see how that goes. A mining mission was also prototyped in which players purchase the location of a valuable prospect. There are currently 3 variants: lawful, which takes place in monitored zone and has friendly defenses to protect against hostiles; unlawful, where players seize legally owned mining claims; and lawless, which takes place in an unmonitored zone and can be accepted by multiple players. That will be very interesting for the PvP crowds. It also allows for those who are doing PvE to have the opportunity to choose or forego, and with the lawful ones for PvE being protected by NPCs, so it will be very interesting. The team are also developing larger mission sets on the Orison platforms. These tasks players with either preventing the Ninetales gang from stealing Crusader Industry prototype parts or stealing them for another criminal organization. That sounds fun. A few other missions progressed through the design and work on Bounty Hunting V2, and the Mission Manager update continued. Finally, for mission features, designs for defending player ships from intruders and ship-based hostilities were worked on. These features are intended to replace the simplistic hostility currently in-game, where ships remember the hostility of their last pilot or turn hostile the moment a hostile player steps aboard. Interesting. So, does that mean that if a red player steps aboard a ship, or if they're on their ship, I hope it's their ship, or even a party member's ship, the ship becomes red, or if they step on any ship, it becomes red? That's going to be interesting to see how they do that. Hopefully we'll get more clarification on that in the coming weeks. In-game branding. Last month, the in-game branding team progressed with their work on the Lorville skyline. They then transitioned to the Invictus launch week, which including a refresh of the DefenseCon branding, which will become the main focus for the upcoming weeks. Progress continued on the brand catalog too. Moving on to lighting. Lighting began the year making progress in several key areas, including tidying and bug fixing Area 18 to restore its intended appearance. Interesting. Work on Pyro continued with the team lighting the interiors and exteriors of the Colonial Outposts and Ruin Station. They also supported the ongoing rework of the Lorville skyline, touching up and improving several areas around the city. Super exciting. Live Tools. In January, the Live Tools team worked on several improvements to the local development environmental tool. They are currently finalizing the last step of implementing the let me re-say that. They are currently finalizing the last step of implementing the Entity Graph tool into the Network Operations Center. The roadmap for 2023 projects was also refined with the addition of new projects that will support server meshing. Locations EU. January saw the locations team continuing work on Pyro's Ruin Station. This behemoth task that the team have been diligently working on, and it's looking better day by day. EU Locations 2 progressed with the local law office mentioned in last month's report and created new content alongside mission features. The Sandbox teams further developed the colonial outposts and continue exploration and development of the underground facilities. Cannot wait for those new underground facilities. I love bunkers. The current implementation has been fun, even though we've had them for years. seeing and knowing we have an entirely new style coming up is I'm excited. Production is starting to ramp up and the teams are feeling good about the work being done. Awesome, good to hear. The organics team spent the month reworking areas already in the game and progressed with the art benchmark for Rocky Caves. Cool. Narrative team. Narrative began the new year with a continued push to support the latest patch and progressed with tasks starting before the holidays. This included working with the design team to start scripting upcoming mining and salvage mission content. They also continued developing stories for the first batch of investigation missions and discussed potential upcoming content. The environmental and design teams provided updates on new locations that will start appearing in the game to support bounty hunting. Narrative worked closely with them to ensure that these areas align with existing lore and gameplay expectations. Planning was also undertaken for the year ahead. Part of this includes building a comprehensive resource listing all the various organizations and NPCs and what mission content they offer. This provides a single source for team members to reference when coming up with new missions. Narrative also seeking to leverage their dedicated narrative designers to look at the current mission giver setup as well as prototype simple story-based missions that could be placed around the various landing zones to provide additional content. Super excited for missions and content around landing zones. The fact that we've gone this long with hardly any missions that we can do around cities, especially for new players, has just been such a hard task for a lot of new players. The team also published their new schedule on approach to lore dispatches. In short, we have scaled back on original fictional content for the website in order to focus on endgame content. The ultimate hope is that we will be able to resurrect these stories and new updates in the game. Great. Moving on to online services. In Montreal, online services planned the year ahead, discussing server meshing with the networking team. The goal was to achieve technical design consensus and division of responsibilities between the teams in order to deliver the feature. The following week, online services further defined the tasks needed to achieve server meshing Tier 0. The remainder of the month was spent putting the final touches on Alpha 3.18's features, including character repair, long-term persistence, insurance, and bug fixing. ShipTech Art and Animation. ShipTech Art and Animation progressed with the whole C. January saw them working on the animation and setup for the ship's expanded cargo mode. Tech animation and damage support was provided for several ships in the pipeline, and all ships were reviewed along QA to ensure the relevant component attachment can take damage. They also enabled shader damage scraping on various ship attachments and fixed several hull scraping issues on ship bodies. Nice. UI. The UI team continued to support Alpha 3.18, ironing out any remaining issues with the way the vehicle and character loadout system interact with the persistent streaming. The team also helped with the Squadron 42 star map, which will eventually make its way into the PU. The current focus is on adding navigation aids, such as grids and coordinates, improving the sizing of planets and markers, and adding visual polish. Sweet. And finally, last month, VFX carried out several CPU to GPU particle library conversions, starting with vehicles. The sheer number of existing libraries combined with new content being added all the time means it can sometimes be tricky for the team to revisit and update older libraries. We are getting there, though. Good to hear. Elsewhere, pre-production began on some new locations, including a huge underground facility and rock caves. Hopefully that's the underground bases or underground facilities, UGFs, mission places. The team also continued with the snag list mentioned last month. While some of this was done in the Alpha 3.18 workspace, it was continued in staging content when 3.18 was locked down in the build-up to release. Alright, And that does it for the monthly report. That was a long one. It's definitely they got a lot of stuff done in this last month, and that's very exciting. Um, you know, in the comment section, let me know what you're most excited about from this monthly report. What are you most excited seeing coming to the game here in the coming months? And yeah, just tell me how you're feeling about the overall progress of the new year so far. With that said, we're going to go ahead and end this video here for the night. If you like the video, please give us a thumbs up. It helps the YouTube algorithm spread our channel so that way more people can find us. And if you feel like we deserved it, give us a subscribe to our channel. We're a small channel looking to grow, currently at 23 members, looking to grow to 100 by the end of the year. And really start a community that people can get behind and talk and have fun. And yeah. But yeah, with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Peace.